Hello, 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 Tampa Bay listeners and beyond. You've got everything PEO on Money Talk 1010 AM. I'm Evan Collart.
I'm Lionel Francis.
Good to see you, my friend.
You too. Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy New Year. Hope everyone was safe and had a blast. I'm happy this year is a new one, and last year is gone. So we can move on forward to better things.
Yeah, right. I last year's victories. Well, they're just simply that. They're last year's victories. Mm-hmm. There's something about re-upping and setting out a new goals plan and kind of mapping out your year to success. And, I say it all the time. This show's really anything entrepreneur. I love to hear these stories, what makes that entrepreneurial spirit tick, and just really jazzed up. We've kind of got this thing rolling now a little bit and got a line out the door of guests coming in over the next few weeks and just good stuff.
Some real good stuff. I mean, this is a time where, especially what I did, and I'm assuming everyone else did, reflection and things that went well and things that you need to improve in, and tackling that as much as you can and finding whatever means and things that you need to make certain things and hitting your goals happen. Again, I'm happy that the new year's here, 2023. And our plan here at Everything PEO is to make sure we provide you with the best information as possible. And we're just going to continue to have a great show and educate.
We are. And I do just want one more time take a victory lap and thank everyone, co-founder Eric Chekarelis, executive producer Aaron Cornicker, Lionel, family, friends, even just the sacrifice every Wednesday, knowing that we're home late and doing the whole, hosting and dinners. And it really is a small army to get it going and keep it rolling. And we thank everyone for helping out.
We do.
Got to get back into it. Turn the page time. So, last week, Mason Dorner, awesome. I like having, not just really industry specific, but really he's marketing in all areas of success. And, being our first guest of the show ever and kind of our last guest to close out 22, that was pretty neat to have Mason on, and he's got a pretty cool year in front of him. But the three big tips, right, for business owners out there, having a good, solid mission statement and core values. You got to, really understand, what you stand for to build a successful business, and be smart and be ready. There's something about being calm and patient when you're making moves with your business, but at the same time, you got to be ready to jump when an opportunity presents itself. Mm-hmm. And I think that third tip was, the overall commitment to the process. Take your lumps. There's a lesson even in losses, okay? Because with every victory, if it just comes too easy, you don't know what to do different, or here's how we fell short, or a true commitment to the process. So it was really, really great having him in here, knowing he's going to be on the road for the next several months one last time.
Yeah. This is a man who's excited about his work and what he does, starting companies up from the ground floor up, building them to powerhouses, and then has the mindset when he sees another niche or something else that needs to be done that could help another company grow, to go ahead and start up another company. So he's now on a new venture, new company, Centonium.
Yep.
Okay. And the new concept of marketing and texting, using text and using emails for marketing. For employers, you could get probably a bigger bang for your buck using that route to see if you could get marketing and getting information out there about your company. So it's fascinating to hear and see how his mind works and how he's thinking constantly of new ways of helping entrepreneur companies, new companies, small companies, just improving and getting bigger and better every year.
Yeah. No, I mean, wise of him, right? Really peel the onion and stick with what works. Mm-hmm. Okay. And the reality is there are some tough times ahead. I mean, budgets and recessions looming, and certain industries are just getting decimated. And so, hiring, PR firms and marketing firms at six-figure retainers is tough. But to really identify the core need of, within that, what is the most successful, and almost having a hybrid. I think it was a good play on his part. And, for the most part, what he seems to touch turns to sold. He's had some enormous victories in his space. He's actually working on the hardcore closer right now. He's trying to close a deal with Ryan Stuman over at Apex Management, which would just really be awesome for him.
If anyone could do it, he can. He'll make it happen.
Well, you're listening to Everything PEO on Money Talk 1010 AM. We are starting 2023 off more or less getting back to the basics. I think our feedback that we get more than any other feedback is always about really breaking down employee leasing, PEO, what does it mean, how does it help, and so it just seems fitting to kind of do a reboot.
Mm-hmm.
And, so for those that aren't aware, Professional Employer Organization, that's the acronym that PEO stands for, large payroll companies, right? And I hate to dummy them down and say it like that, but that's really what's happening on paper. Instead of the business owner purchasing their own workers' comp policy, they're basically borrowing the PEOs. And to be able to borrow their policy or their coverage, you've got to be on their payroll. So that's why those two always come hand in hand, right? I mean, we hear it a lot. I can do my own payroll. Can't you just cover me for the comp? And unfortunately, that's just not how this model works.
And we also find out and hear later on that they've also used an outsourced payroll anyway. Since you're using it anyway, you're just transferring it over to a PEO. We're doing the exact same thing that they're doing as well, but we're doing the workers' comp at pay as you go at the same time. Save your money, save your capital. Standard market, the way it works, and everyone knows how it works. And for those who don't, they figure out your premium, for the year, and basically there's a percentage that they want up front. And after that percentage they collect up front, there's an arrangement of how you pay the remaining amount, either on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis, however you decide to work it out that way. And we sit here saying, why do that? Why give someone 30, 35, 40 something $1,000 when you could keep it in-house, use it for hiring another employee, using it for material, using it for tools? Why do that when you have another for marketing? You have another option here, someone else who could take care of all that for you and provide you, again, pay as you go workers' comp, less money coming out of your pocket and handling your payroll at the same time.
Yeah, I am shocked. I mean, our number one way of getting this business is we partner with insurance agents all over the country and help them place the workers' comp that they can put in that standard market, right? And just like Lionel was saying, I mean, for those that don't have a workers' comp policy, it virtually feels no different than if you had a car insurance, right? You have your down payment, you make monthly installment payments throughout the year, and that premium is determined by your payroll times your workers' comp rate, right? Very simple, kind of straightforward premium allocation there. But I am shocked more than not. I would say easily 4 out of 5 accounts that we end up working on it for whatever reason. If they are in the standard market, they're still using a third-party payroll platform of some kind, whether it's the ADPs or the Paychecks of the world, the Prime Pays. I mean, there are so many payroll-only platforms out there these days. But it's a simple value proposition. It is no tougher than if by outsourcing to a PEO, I'm able to reduce my bottom line. Is it worth it to me? Right. And so once you kind of get past that, I've got to move my payroll over and, taking a look at any insurance policy is a drag, but it's something you've got to have. Right. That's the one thing about this industry compared to others. If they're building anything, if they're working any kind of a trade, anything that has scope, minimum mandate, they've got to pull a permit to do that work. You've got to have active workers' comp to get there. And so we're going down a path of something you have to have anyways. Through a system of policy and using a payroll service anyways. Simple value prop, putting it under the same roof. Can you get a discount? Is it worth entertaining a PEO? And that's really kind of the birth of the show, more or less, is to get this out on the forefront. I mean, and it's not like this in every state, but we are approaching a time, especially here in Florida, where nearly 2 out of 3 blue-collar businesses are having to get their insurance through this platform. And so with it gaining such traction, and we all know why, Lionel, right? We've talked about this a lot on the show, 9 straight years of workers' comp rate reductions. Mm-hmm. All right. That as much as the business owner champions the fact that her rates are lower than they've ever been, the counter to that is it's also becoming the hardest market that it's ever been. Okay. And if the premium is so low that it gets to a point where, carriers don't want to take it on, how great is it that they're that low?
And you're left with several options only. And the only options is either the carrier leaving the state or they could do a consent to rate, which means they could increase the rate on the workers' comp for their risk of bringing you on board. So that's the options that's left.
And don't forget the state, right? Because, hey, if no one else will rate you, the state will always swoop in at anywhere from 3 to 10x on premium surcharges. Lionel, like you said, it becomes limited quickly. Yeah. Now, I heard this with Tobin the other day, and I was not aware of this, that carriers are only allowed to consent to rate only 10% of their policies, right? I would imagine they're going to hit those pretty quick this year.
Oh, yeah, very quickly.
So what's the PEO do, right? We're going back to the basics here. We've got a few minutes before our first break, right? We come in, we've talked about this just now, taking over your payroll, taking over your state and federal payroll tax disbursement, but not only to the level of we make the payment for you. If we don't make it correctly, the PEO is liable, right? By shifting this over to the PEO's policy, you're shifting over to their tax ID number, to their quarterlies, to their, year-end statements, and if it's not done right, it actually is a limited liability transfer on them.
And one of the questions, as I always ask, we just brought up payroll. One of the other questions is, or aren't there your employees? No, you're going into a partnership with us, okay? It's a co-employer relationship. You do not dictate who you hire, who you fire. These are your employees. But for us to take over and be 100% liable of taking care of your taxes, your quarterly taxes, your 940s and your 941s, we have to put your employees under our federal tax ID number as a PEO to make sure we can provide and take care of those taxes for you as an employer and make sure everything's compliant. So that's one thing I wanted to put out there and make sure you understand. These are your employees.
Yeah, it's called co-employment for a reason.
Yeah.
Right? At the end of the day, at the state level, they're recognized as the PEO's employees from a workers' comp standpoint and from a state unemployment tax standpoint, right? You go on their workers' comp policy, you go on their state unemployment rate, right? And again, shift is there, meaning if it isn't done correctly, and we're going to get into some of these, in the next segment about kind of claims management and all the things that the PEO does for you when taking on those claims. But yeah, that's a big one. You're still in charge of the hiring and the firing and the training and that everyday, process that comes with having employees. But we're just taking that one thing off your plate. I read this article today. It was kind of neat. It said, the one great thing about a PEO is they don't call out sick, right? They don't go on maternity leaves. They don't relocate. They don't leave the state typically. Having that part of your business run very smooth and symbiotically is really the start of everything. And in the beginning, there's so many things you're working to get going. We talked about this just a little bit last week. If you're getting a building, right, securing a lease, first, last, security, getting trucks, getting the proper insurances, right, building a brand, marketing it, getting your name out there, finding, without clients. And this is where I think so many businesses go wrong, right? At the end of the day, they spend so much time on R&D and building this great brand. But if they don't obtain clients, there's nothing, right? Without that, there is nothing. So you're just working for so many things, being compliant. I mean, it's a very long list. And so to be able to adopt the PEO and take so many of those tasks off of your plate in one fell swoop, streamline your cash flow, put yourself in an audit-free system, benefits, essentially having access to Fortune 500 benefits day one. These are all massive, massive perks of using the PEO. And
it allows you to concentrate on what you do best as a company, okay? Not having to worry about the other things that comes with running a company when you have a PEO involved who could assist and help you out. Concentrate on your core of business. What are you doing? And making sure your employees are happy. We'll be right
hitting some good stuff. PEO 101 before the break.
So we always do a portion of our show where we give you the save of the week. So, Evan, you got something for me?
Yeah, kind of a quiet week. I think there was a big, hustle and bustle in the start of December. We had a great month, but then things have been quiet the last couple of weeks. So, but we did get a call today. It was a client that left us about a year ago and went to the standard market and ADP route. and just had their year close out with them. It wasn't the best experience. Not that this is necessarily ADP's fault, but very quickly wanted to come back, get back into that audit-free environment, the pay-as-you-go environment, and it's just tough. Third-party payroll is just tough. Some of the payroll comes out quarterly, the taxes, some of it comes out, each cycle, the net amounts. And there's just the one nice thing about that PEO and stabilizing that cash flow is you get an invoice each pay cycle. It has the exact amount of taxes owed, the exact amount of wages, comp, fees for the service, and it's just a one invoice, one-stop shop. He very much wanted to go back to that experience. So it was kind of neat to get a longtime client back to start the week, the new year.
It's amazing that sometimes when they do go out and then they come back, and you ask why. I want to know why when you're coming back, the reason. And one of those reasons, they realized that they were spending more time handling all the office side of the business, the payroll, the taxes, quarterly taxes, taking care of these things here and there. But the biggest thing I've always heard is when it comes to an audit, they do not like audits. Okay, coming into a PEO environment, you're no longer subject to an audit anymore. Okay, because we're now responsible making sure we take care of these poor payroll taxes and everything else for you. So that's one of the biggest things coming into a PEO that you do not have to deal with. And for those who've ever dealt with an audit, have a conversation with them,
Sure,
or her. It's not always pretty.
yeah, and it's funny. Where the paychecks is and the ADPs of the world do a great job. I think it's training them to talk CPA and to talk payroll as good as anybody, right? That's how they often find their business. They go out and they recruit CPAs and kind of funnel through that channel. Where we stick to more to that property and casualty agent, they're getting it more from payroll-only type channels. But where they fall short in a lot of cases is they don't teach them to talk insurance. Right. And don't get me wrong, employee leasing, PEO, this business scales due to the volume of the payroll and the admin fee building over time. But the engine that really drives this thing is workers' comp.
Right.
And so when they're saying, hey, I can do it for $11 a check and that's going to save you X, Y, Z, and there's really no mention of the true coverage differences. Now we have to go off of your mod. It resets. If you had a 20% discount, you're losing that now. I mean, all kinds of, frankly, I just don't think it's about being devious. I think they just don't have the knowledge.
Yeah. And this show was created to make sure we get the information out, especially to agents, making sure they understand that PEOs out here to partner up with them to make sure we can help their clients and keep them compliant. These are some of the questions that come up. These are some of the things that happens where they do not and can't get an answer and need help. A PEO, what 20 years in the business, we've had so many things cross our desks. Trust me, if we don't have the answer, we'll get the answers. Too many people in this industry, or we'll be able to give you the answer to help you out and make sure you're successful at what you do. So
compliance huge, and it comes in a lot of ways. Whether it's state compliance, right? We had that business owner a couple weeks ago that just got in a contract. They're in 7 states all at once. Each state has a different workers' comp platform. Each state has a different state unemployment rate, and each state has all different little, some of them have income tax. I mean, they all have their own little caveat of differences. And as exciting as getting one of those contracts in and having to be in 7 states day one, I don't even know how it's possible without going through that PEO path. Right. So, but beyond that, what if they have a DOT program now, right? Department of Transportation, they have their own set of drug testing, background checks. I mean, there's so many things to go in, whether it's compliance or through HR, that, the reality is that's why these PEOs and third-party payroll providers exist. There's just too many things to be juggling. When you're trying to get your feet wet in a new business.
Yeah, we talked about it last week on the show, that everyone is outsourcing these days. Every company is outsourcing in some way, somehow, and they're doing outsourcing. If it's marketing, if it's payroll, if it's workers' comp, they're outsourcing. This is the way of the future, to making sure you can streamline certain things and concentrate on what you do best and letting another company who specializes in what they do to make sure you're okay take over in a sense. And again, you hear this all the time. Well, I feel uncomfortable. I feel like these are your employees, or this your company. No, it's not your company. It's not our company. It's still your company. The conversation is huge. Having a conversation with someone in a PEO, it just takes one conversation to discuss how we do things, how we could help you, and make sure you understand completely what we're here for. It's just to make sure you're safe, you're compliant, and you're running smoothly.
How, and rarely, if they just sit down and absorb that,
Mm-hmm.
very few, whether they go with us or not, but so many of them end up in the PEO space and very few rebuke it later. I mean, we ran some analytics just a couple weeks ago. Less than 5% of the businesses that come in from standard market roll into a PEO for whatever reason. New state, coverage issues, all the above, claims issues. Less than 5% of them roll back out, right? And it's because the adoption of that service and realizing and recognizing everything that it takes off of your plate, on top of the financial impact, it makes it a no-brainer, right? We had Clay Kelly on our very first show 21 weeks ago, and he said, well, what if you look at it like this? The PEO's for free, right? Whether we come in and we save you $5,000, $10,000, $50,000, whatever that number is, that's a savings of the bottom line against all the variables, what you're paying for workers' comp, what you're paying for your state unemployment tax rate, what you're paying to outsource your payroll, kind of tally those, create a T-chart, if you will, in your brain. And if there's a reduction there, why not just say, hey, you're getting a reduction in the PEO for free? I mean,
Makes total sense.
It's tough to argue with.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you're listening to Everything PEO, Money Talk 1010 AM, starting 2023 with getting back to the basics, kind of PEO 101. And we went through a lot of the feature benefits last segment. I wanted to get into claims management. Rarely, especially if, the insurance agent's kind of lobbying for the PEO in lieu of finding something, do they have the time or the wherewithal to go through all these differences and these massive differences? And claims management is a probably the hardest bell to ring. When you're using third-party payroll, you're on your own for any workers' comp injuries, any unemployment claims, even health benefit options, right? I mean, they're just third-party payroll. It's like the equivalent of using your brother-in-law to do your payroll for you. Someone's helping you with the check cutting for a fee. And of course, there's payroll tax distribution and things like that, but on the broad stroke, all right? When adopting the PEO, we do all the claims management for you, right? And there's a lot of business owners out there, Lionel, that have probably, they could have had workers' comp 10 years, never even had a claim. So just hearing that doesn't really give enough impact, especially if they've never had a claim.
Yeah, but for those who had any claims at all, they've experienced how it feels to go through it, the process. Listen, the one thing I find out and hear about when I bring a company on board that handled their claims is not knowing step by step what's going on. They're lost. The one thing I hate when I'm reading a claim report and I'm looking at the years that these claims happen, that there's still a claim there from 2016, 2017, reserves still being held, and the employer themselves still don't know why and never asked the question. Here with a PEO, you get educated on how things work when it comes to claim and claim management. Yes, we assist. We go step by step in making sure these employees get to work as quickly as possible. First, let's take care of the employees. If they're injured, make sure they get taken care of. They get checked out. Next thing, get back to work as quickly as possible. But also educating you and making sure an adjuster is communicating with you and letting you know what's going on step by step. And the one thing we said a couple of nights ago on our show, it'll be great if you guys had someone like us to tell you, hey, we're going to walk you step by step on other suggestions and other good ideas you should do to make sure you know exactly what's going on with your claims. For example, when and where and how.
Post-injury changes.
Mm-hmm.
Huge.
Yeah.
Let's go through this a little bit.
Okay.
Let's do a deeper dive, right? At the end of the day, we're talking to a business owner who's never even had a claim. What happens first, right? So, of course, like Lionel said, you dial that 911 if you have to, but to be honest, if you have the ability of calling the PEO or the carrier and dispatching to the closest workers' comp clinic, that's step one in keeping your rates and your claims down, right? An ambulance ride's $10,000 these days. Mm-hmm. A half a day in ER is $10,000 these days. So if you're able to dispatch to a local clinic because the claim's that minor, that's the first step, I would say. Secondly, usually within 24 hours, 24 to 48, there's some form of a urine test or a blood sample that's taken to making sure, right, that there's no drugs being done on the job, there's no substance issues resulting to this claim. And if and when there is, it is up for denial. That doesn't mean it's a flat denial, but it certainly means it could be denied. You know, that's the one thing that also where PEOs really help these business owners. In the employee packet, there's an acknowledgement in there that we acknowledge that this is a drug-free workplace. And so, of course, as unfortunate as these things are, right, and that's what we're doing. We're insuring injuries. So it's you have to have that tough talk. But the reality is if there's a substance abuse issue on the job and that claim's able to be denied, probably should be. Right. They're endangering other employees. Mm-hmm. They're endangering patrons. From there, like Lionel mentioned, getting them, it's very much a two-pronged thing, getting them healed and then getting them back to work. And so light duty and things like that start to be assigned. The employee can come back on a 10-hour basis and lift up to 15 pounds. And there's progressional steps to get them back to full speed.
And there's some PEOs, I'm sorry, Evan, there's some PEOs could assist. If you can't find something for them to do, they'll help you find something to get that employee working and something safe that they could do until they could get back to work. I mean, the source of information that you could get from a PEO is huge. From the person and the employee in the hospital to having someone there with the report to find out exactly what's going on from the doctor. And that's one of the other things we brought up on the show. Is that it would be great as an employer, and I know you're busy, but if you want to know exactly what's happening with your employees, if there's any way you could get out there and hear for yourself what's going on,
huge.
It's huge.
The nice thing is the PEO affords you a lot of luxuries. Right. You fill out a simple first report of injury, a synopsis of what went down that day. You turn it in, and the PEO can take it from there all the way through. Even if a lot of these workers' comp claims these days, I hate to say it, they end in some form of litigation or they attorney up. The Morgan and Morgans of the world jumped on the case. They sue for more benefits. So that's the one nice thing. When I say this isn't just using a third-party payroll service, the limited liability transfer that we were discussing last segment doesn't hit harder when you're going through the claims department. So it's the PEO's responsibility to bring mediation, litigation, attorneys all the way through that case. Yes, if you want to be a more savvy business owner, you should be going to the follow-up visits. You should be hearing firsthand what's being assigned at the light duty moments. But if you don't, the PEO's got your back.
The PEO got your back. We have adjusters who will give you a call and go through step by step what's going on, to the point where if the employee was supposed to go to a doctor appointment and missed a doctor appointment, someone's going to be notified. Okay. And it's best that you always know when their appointments are, so you can make sure you have that on your calendar and remind them yourself. So if you have to, hey, did you make that appointment, that doctor appointment? Claim management is huge. Yeah. Taking that off your plate is huge.
Yeah. Huge. It carries right over to unemployment the same way. The reality is simple, not first report of injury, but in this case, an employee termination form, the who, what, where, why, when, how did it happen? Spelling that out, if and when that employee becomes eligible for unemployment benefits, all paid through the PEO, okay? And they manage it the whole way. It is a little different from when you file for unemployment for the state. A lot of times you can just file and you get the 6-month payout. Mm-hmm. The PEO is going to keep you on your toes a little bit. They're going to want to see proof that you're actually out there trying to gainfully find employment. And if not, those benefits can stop. And same for workers' comp, right? If you get approved for light duty, but then you don't come back to work, it's job abandonment.
Right.
Those benefits will shut down. These are tough conversations to have at times, but the PEO kind of navigates that whole thing for you. You don't have time to be a specialist in everything, right? If you're a plumber, painter, that's what your niche is. This keeps you out doing your thing to the highest level, knowing that all this back minutia is going to be covered. But yeah, even the average unemployment claim is 10 hours of man time. If they fight it, end up having to go to court over it or mediate about it, these become very expensive very quickly. These are additional charges that, above and beyond your workers' comp premium, right? If you've got to hire an attorney and you've got standard market coverage, the carrier's not bringing that. And oftentimes when it goes that path, that's when all communication stops between claimant, and employer. Once the attorneys are involved, our attorneys talk to your attorneys. That's it. These become very timely, very expensive processes.
When you start a company or you're going for your license, your GC license, there is no book that's provided to you, this 101 class, to explain everything we just mentioned just now, how to handle a claim, how to handle and go step by step and handle the claim, how payroll, situations with payroll and employees, how should I be paying them, hourly, overtime, piecework, day work. It's not a 101, it's new business 101. It's not out there. To have a company who's educated enough to give you all that, we have specialists around to give you all that information you need, step by step. Take advantage of it. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Why
right?
wouldn't you?
Say it all the time. If by outsourcing to a PEO, you can reduce your bottom line, is it worth it to you? And you start to really get into the fine, the feature benefits go so much deeper. So much deeper. I mean, we haven't even gotten into the health plans, right? And I know we got about a minute here before break, but excuse me. Having day one Fortune 500 benefits, right? Same thing. People get sick. How, who, what are my rights? How does the plan work? Having a health I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm still not a health specialist.
I'm not.
Right?
I'm not.
But we make sure that we've got the right person on the job if and when you're getting the benefits through the PEO. Oftentimes at a discounted rate. And then if you get into 50 and over and you have to get into Affordable Care Act compliance, right? That comes at 50 employees and up. It's a mandate that you buy through that platform. No one understands that stuff. It's almost cringe.
It's one of the tools that I'm starting to see being used right now to get and keep good employees. So, again, being educated on the benefit side as well, just jumping on board with a PEO will be beneficial for you.
It's always a fast hour. Lionel, let's get into it. Everything relevant. You got something good for the new year?
Well, 2023, reminders for those and the employers. Pay rates, pay has gone up $11. Wages have gone up $11 an hour. I was working with a company, bringing them on board. And we set them up to run payroll 2 weeks. And we got a call back, say, well, Lana, we have to hold this up a little bit. And said, well, what happened? He said, well, we weren't paying our employees the $10 an hour. And so to make sure they have one W-2, we have to go retro and pay them all that money back that they missed and didn't get paid for. So we're now in a standstill. And this was before the new year, but we were in a standstill. And they had to pay all these employees all back pay.
So they were paying below minimum wage.
They were paying below minimum wage, and they got caught and realized they weren't given the $11 wage increase and had to go retro and pay them for every payroll that they ran from that period of time. I guess the whole year.
Yeah. Well, it's still shocking to me that, with pay, I guess, being at an all-time high, rates being at an all-time low, that finding people in the workforce is tough as it is. We talk about this a lot on the show. I mean, the buying power for employees right now has never been higher. You can go to McDonald's and get yourself into a $15, $16 an hour job pretty easily. If you're in the skilled trades and you're doing roofing, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, and you're making under that, it's time to have that hard conversation with the employer. Mm-hmm. It really is, especially now with minimum wage at 11. There's a moment where I've put in my time. I've made, a fraction above that, and now the dishwashers are getting that. And I don't mean that any particular way, but the reality is skilled trade should be paid, according to skilled trade. Mm-hmm. And they really, really have this moment of so many people are looking for good work, right? So many people. So at the end of the day, if you don't pay me what I'm worth, I believe kicking the can and going down there and finding someone who will's never been easier.
I'm going to throw another one in there. I had a call this morning from one of my clients I've had on board for a while. And she said, Lionel, I'm torn. I said, what's going on? She said, I have an employee that we want to bring on board. We do a drug test, and obviously there was drugs in their system, marijuana. They provided us with a marijuana card. Okay. The problem is in our questionnaire, they marked no for substance abuse. any substance, but the blood test shows marijuana. What should I do? I said, hey, all I could tell you is if that employee gets injured on the job, there's a claim. If they get injured, there will be a claim. Well, Lionel, they have a marijuana card. The federal has not approved that.
Yeah,
Where it's
massive
legal.
gray area.
Yeah, there's a huge gray area. So carriers are using that and saying, well, no, we're not going to pay for this claim. So keep that in mind. And I know it's hard. And the conversation, I said, listen, this must be a great person for you to be calling me and wanting to keep them on board. She said, yes, but I have to think about my company, because if the other employees found out that I let this happen and hire him with a marijuana card, what else do you think is going to happen after that?
Yeah, it opens up, bias and it's you got to keep it on a level playing field.
Yeah.
It's definitely, I'd say that's probably the biggest conundrum of 2023, because so many states even have it recreational now, and there's not a line in the sand of everyone doing it the same. Some carriers are it's an automatic denial, and some will say we'll put you at a suspended status 30 days, come back, be able to pass a UA in 30, we'll put you right back on, you never skip a beat. But it's almost coming down to carrier preference at this point. But, considering that they're viewing it as a legal form of medication, I'm sure Morgan & Morgan's going to win more of these than they're not.
Yeah, yeah. And again, it's just another point of us being partners and having a company on board with us for so long, and me having this relationship that she felt, let me give Lionel a call and have this conversation and see what's his thoughts. Now, again, I told my accountant, I said, listen, they're your employees. You do what you want as an employer. You're asking my advice. I'm just giving you my advice, but you do what you want. She said, Lana, it makes sense. It makes sense. I'm worried about other employees finding out that I let this be okay, and next thing you know, I have a bunch of marijuana cards all over the place. Yeah. So,
no,
it was a sticky situation.
They have to keep it across the field, though, right? Yeah. Otherwise, it's discrimination of some sort.
Yeah.
All right. And a couple of our PEOs are getting out of taking I-9s in the new year. Literally, we're 2 weeks in or 2 days into the new year. We've already had one call and say, well, I still want the PEO to continue to do it. Right. And it's a tough no, because if the PEO does it on this one client, but stops doing it on all of the rest, and the wrong person finds that out, it's discrimination against the others. And so, level across the board. Again, not to ring the bell, but another reason why you want to be on with the PEO, to help you with this stuff. Compliance. You got an open springboard of people that you can bounce this kind of stuff off of and get accurate information, right? Well, I know you said we're going to get into some New Year's reminders. Top of the pile, got to be workers' comp exemptions.
Yeah, let's talk about that one. That's interesting.
Yeah, again, I think it's challenging because with rates literally at a historic low for the state of Florida, I don't know, why we're still stuck on trying to exempt out if we can.
I'm surprised exemption is still around.
Yeah. Well, let's get down to the basics, right? State of Florida says that you can have up to 3 workers' comp exemptions per corporation, right? To qualify for that, you have to at least be 10% ownership in the business, okay? Biggest myth out there is that you can exempt your employees. Second biggest myth out there is that if you're only taking part-time wages, you don't count towards the ratio. If you're an owner and you're taking a W-2 check through the business, you count towards the employee count ratio, right? Too often do we get general contractors come in, they say, you know what, I sub out 100% of my work, but I only sub to exempt individuals, so I know I'm not liable. And that is massively misunderstood. The exemption is a mandate of when you have to buy workers' comp, nothing more, nothing less.
Correct.
Okay. State of Florida says if you're a blue-collar business, once you have one employee, you have to have workers' compensation. Right? If you're the owner and you're that one employee, that mandate to buy is there. If you exempt yourself out, which you can do, now you don't necessarily have to carry workers' comp in the state of Florida sense. But when and if you sub to someone that has an exemption and they get hurt, you are still liable. Okay? You're telling them where to be. You're giving right direction and control in that moment, even though it's a subcontractor. It does not waive their right to sue if injured.
you're starting to see, and it's been happening for a while, this trend where GCs are not accepting exempt employees. They are mandating that they have workers' comp. They are mandating that they have $1 million policy across the board. They do not want to get caught with any claims of any sort of you having an employee on the job site, one who's not on the books and gets injured on the job. Because what ends up happening, let's really think about it. You get an attorney involved, you're looking at a 5-man company, the payroll amount and the business amount, let's say is anywhere from 125,000 to 150,000. But that GC that actually put you on that job is worth what? 5 million, 6 million? Who do you think the attorney's going after?
Well, even easier than that, though. There's no one below the claimant to pursue. Okay, who put you on the job? My boss. Okay, do they have policies? And if so, we'll try to secure coverage there. They don't have anything. They only have an exemption. Who put them? The GC that put them on there. Same thing. What
Keeps
if the
going.
GC, it goes up? Who put the GC on the project? Now you start getting into the municipalities almost. Right? There's no one below the injured worker to go after. So it's a totem pole that goes one way. And the hierarchy of insurances say workers' comp is the Trump insurance in this scenario. Even if they got hurt in the car. You and I just had a case together just this week, right? The guy thought it was going to be a commercial auto claim because the injured employee was in the car when it happened. It wasn't until he called his commercial auto agent, turned in the claim, got denied, then circled back to us 3 days later and says, oh, it looks like I need to turn in this workers' comp claim. How did that go, by the way?
We're still working on it. I know an adjuster got involved and they've had communication with that employee. So, we're going step by step and seeing how this is going to work. It should be It should be fine.
Where that gets tough is there's time in there, time and delay. So luckily this all happened within 72 hours, and I'm shocked, to be honest, around the holidays. But imagine if that was a 2-week process that drug out and then finally got the denial and then called Lionel and I after 2 weeks. You may have missed that window of even being able to turn in that injury.
Oh, I could tell you for a fact that claim would be denied. For a fact, it would be denied. And now you're stuck with an injured employee and medical bills that you have to pay.
And it's not necessarily everyone's trying to be devious or everyone's trying to cheat the system. Some industries are just more prone to 1099 exposure. You got to be careful. You say 1099 employee every time, but really you're crossing the line of being an independent contractor, right? And these are not your employees. Even if you're in the industry, cleaning services, for example, right? They work a couple hours, a couple days a week. They usually clean for a few services, so they don't feel like you're an employee necessarily. And if you're okay having every single time you put someone on a job, knowing you're exposed, there's a gray area of, surviving in there. Plus, in a non-blue collar setting, you don't have to buy workers' comp until you have your 4th W-2, right? So 3 or less, you're fine. And so you just get caught within that window of compliance on a more or less of a gray area. And then I hear a lot, because they're all part-time. It's not it's not 3 full-time employees that makes that. It's 3 W-2s.
Exactly.
No matter what. Right? And so just really kind of understanding the compliance that has to go with it. But yes, I think the state would be doing everyone a big favor to kind of get out of the exemption business. It's, the most misunderstood part of workers' comp, especially here in Florida.
Yeah, you're talking about that story with the cleaning service, and I'm sorry, we're talking about workers' comp right now, but I just had a situation that happened not too long ago. We discussed the workers' comp in 1099, and we went through everything saying, listen, you still, if they get injured on the job, you're going to be responsible. But we even dove even deeper into it. Because you find out that some of these cleaning companies, they're 1099s, but you're giving them a company car to drive. Okay? Not only that, if you need to contact them and communicate with them, you're giving them a cell phone.
Yeah.
Okay? They're no longer 1099, everyone.
Yeah. Really, I mean.
The right attorney gets involved in that. They're employees. And once they find out they're employees, you might be surprised what ends up happening later on, because they might try to go get retro pay that they probably would have had because they worked more than 40 hours.
Well, it's bigger than that in the sense that this stops becoming a workers' comp scenario only. Now it's about cheating payroll taxes.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the reality is, out of all the taxes out there, sales tax and property tax and all the taxes out there, they'll work with you. They'll reduce fines and waive penalties, but not on payroll tax. No way, no how. That the minute that money hits the Social Security and the Medicare coffers, it is used instantly.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a surplus sitting there. They're operating that on a deficit. So I assure you, out of all the taxes out there, this is the one where the government will work with you the least. All right. They've got to really, and that's what's kind of scary about this 87,000 IRS agent thing. This is really waging war on the middleman. It really is. Not that we're going to go take a political turn here, but the reality is we voted this person in. This is something he's implementing here in the new year. And I don't think we're worried about the billionaires and every exchange they have over $600, but every cleaning service, for example, that does a Venmo exchange of $601 is now tracked by the IRS.
Wow.
Very easy to get into this quickly and say, oh, well, not just comp, really, the bigger fish in all of this is going after the payroll tax dodging in a huge way.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, another reminder out there.
Well, let's just jump into this one, which is still happening right now. Companies from out of state coming into Florida and trying to look for work and get jobs, and they're not, they don't have their papers here to work in Florida. They haven't applied and gotten their federal tax ID number or license to work here in Florida. They're still getting turned away. I'm still getting calls. I'm trying to help them out as much as I can, giving them whatever information I can so they could get what they need set up to work in the state of Florida. But it is still happening. There are still arrests being done for those who are coming out here working without the proper paperwork.
Yeah, and we're seeing a trend with a lot of the carriers where they will not write these roofers their own general liability policies if they don't have that license in their name. Mm-hmm. Where in the past they could qualify through someone else, which is really, for the lack of a better word, using their license to pull permits and things of that nature. And even though it was tolerated that you'd be qualifying through someone else's license, you would still be able to secure your own general liability policy. We are seeing in a big way that trend is changing, and which means it's great that people are still flooding the state to try and rebuild South Florida. And from the sounds of it, we still need the help. Yeah. I mean, there's years and years worth of building to be done down there, but I would say pump the brakes on that. Make sure you come correct and compliant. It is a FEMA project where they're literally combing the site daily for compliance and certificates. And like Lionel said, I mean, we probably see multiple articles a week about folks getting arrested on these stings and nasty business down there.
It's very nasty.
Say that's a big thing to keep in mind coming into 2023.
And please understand, this isn't a 24-hour process where you think you could get everything you need that quick, especially through the state and making sure you're licensed here. You got to understand the steps that has to be followed to make things happen. And if you want to have that conversation with us at a PEO company, tell you what steps you need to take, we'll be willing to help you out with that as well. But
looks like we're ending a little soon today.
Already.
All right. Coming up in 2 weeks, we've got Sons Insurance in studio. Very excited to get our first workers' comp carrier in studio. Pretty jazzed up about it. That's our first show in 2023.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, It's going to be a good year. You know how this goes. Love God. Appreciate your PEO. Be kind to your staff. And know we're on a 167-hour break.